Hey everyone, I'm Ben, VP of Product here at Geckoboard, and today I'm excited to be joined by Bryan Byler, Chief Revenue Officer at Aptitude 8, an elite HubSpot solutions partner known for solving complex upmarket RevOps problems, focusing on HubSpot. They have one of the most technical teams in the ecosystem, they have multiple HubSpot accreditations, and even spun an app studio with investment for HubSpot Ventures. They've helped major brands implement, expand, and extend HubSpot far beyond the basics. Bryan leads their go-to-market, and I'm excited to chat with him today about the things he's seen on the ground with teams working with their data. So, Bryan.
Yeah, excited to be here. And thanks for having me, Ben. Big fans of Geckoboard's products and always happy to connect with you all. I'm the CRO of Aptitude 8. We're one of the top HubSpot consulting firms globally. We specialize in, upmarket, enterprise, and kind of complex implementations, data migrations, and systems integrations. Been, in the HubSpot ecosystem for about 7 or 8 years now, I guess. Been a big fan of it. Background is in consulting and some OD work. Built a career on HubSpot, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I'm curious, when people are coming to you, I know you work particularly with difficult problems, and obviously HubSpot being as deep as it is, you can push it really, really far. But what kinds of problems would you say the majority of prospects or customers that you're working with are trying to solve?
Types of problems that we encounter are related to either marketing or sales in the CRM in most cases. We don't have a good market automation tool. A new marketing executive has come into a company and they've inherited an older or legacy map that they don't like or aren't used to using or want something different. And probably the third is issues with attribution and reporting and visibility of their data. That's on the marketing side. The biggest problems we face with sales leaders are similarly, a lack of a good CRM, right? It could be Excel. A surprising number of our clients are working with spreadsheets. Now, they're very sophisticated spreadsheets, but they've outgrown that. Probably the second most common pain point we see is our systems are too complex and they're leading to things like poor adoption, misuse. They're bloated. And probably the third most common sales problem is a lack of visibility into marketing data. Where are the leads coming from? Are they qualified? Are they ICP? Are they coming into sales in the funnel at the right time?
When you're working with clients, and maybe it's different for the different segments, but how are you generally finding their reporting in terms of their knowledge of their needs, but also how well they're able to meet them in the tool?
Yeah, it varies dramatically. Most larger, notable household names that you'd recognize that we work with, their reporting is very inadequate, right? And they've gotten by because maybe they haven't needed it or their growth trajectory is so high that it's not been made a priority. It's the companies that really need clarity into their data that I think put the most effort into it. HubSpot certainly has capabilities, right?
Perhaps when you're doing one of those bigger transformation projects, how do you go about understanding what it is that they should be looking at? I mean, I guess you've got experience, you've got comparable projects, but I imagine there's also a portion that must be sort of quite context specific to that specific customer or client.
In our sales process, we spend a lot of time with our prospects, 20, 30, 40 hours or more just in pre-sales at our cost, because it's so important that we get a deep understanding of their business processes, their data model, how their business works, how they acquire customers, how they convert them, what they do after conversion. Because all of those three things, like pre-sales, during sales, and post-sales, are all potentially pieces of the reporting puzzle, right? And when we have all three and understand all three, then we can look at full customer journey level reporting, and that's far more impactful, right? So many companies just report on what happens up to the sale, and they do sales forecasts and they stop there. And that's where our consultants, step in and say, hey, what happens next? But getting all of that data together in a single dashboard or a single view for executives to look at and talk about is so much more impactful for the business instead of seeing the silos that we see otherwise. And we believe the most important word that our teams can ask our prospects and clients is the word why. Why is it set up like that? Why do you do that? Or what happens next? What we hear, unfortunately, too often is we've always done it that way, right? And that's status quo, isn't really scalable, as we've learned, right? And so sometimes the why leads to a good questioning sequence where we uncover some new reporting requirements. Well, have you ever thought about this? Sometimes, we like to call it our prospects, but vibes. You can't build a business on vibes. You might build a vibe code of CRM. These days, but you can't build a scalable business on it. So that's for sure.
Have you ever found situations where, perhaps despite best efforts, the engagement with reporting data was lower than you or the client had hoped? And if so, how would you set about trying to fix that?
Yeah, we do see that. And I think most commonly where we see that is when no one manages them after implementation. So, after we kind of shake hands and maybe we go our separate ways, somebody's got to be responsible for updating, maintaining, keeping those dashboards refreshed, continue to work on them. And sometimes they may go stale. No one's updating them. Maybe a rep leaves and no one updates the rep dashboard to remove them. But someone has really got to keep those dashboards up to date and current. If you no longer track a particular metric, remove that from your dashboard. If you're tracking a new metric, update it.
Yeah, we found that to be super true in our situation as well. Like particularly when you get in rollouts in bigger companies, I suppose, where you start to get more people managing boards, building their own boards and so on, then people leave and then those boards go stale, or you've got some set up that are left there but no one's checked them in ages, and then a new person comes into the account and goes, oh, I'm going to check the sales dashboard, but no one's touched it in 6 months and actually all the reports are wrong.
We had a call last week, very, very similar, Ben, where we were looking at, they had like a sales rep dashboard, and we were just seeking to understand, like, hey, this rep is really crushing it. Like, oh, well, they don't work here anymore. Oh, okay, well, how about this person? They don't work here anymore either. How about, well, who works here? Like, which of these people on this dashboard are still at your business? Well, these 3. Let's remove the other 7, that don't need to be there. And then we did that, and guess what? 7 more people popped on. And so, turns out their sales team was more competitive than they thought they were. The biggest thing I think for us is ensuring there's a process around it, right? I can build you the most awesome dashboard in the world. They're only impactful and useful when people are looking at them, right? If you're not looking at the data often in a regular recurrence or some kind of operating rhythm, then the data becomes less important.
I think there is often a tension, I think perhaps in sales, between wanting to promote competition, promote motivation, encourage people, things like gamification, versus reps perhaps feeling like overly monitored or overly pressured. And I'm curious whether you've ever found that come up in any of your engagements you've done, and if so, what you found to be effective ways to try and bridge the gap.
I think most salespersons are competitive. You probably wouldn't want to be a salesperson if you weren't a little bit competitive, at least. But for me, there's a fine line between a competitive sales culture and a toxic sales culture, right? Weaponizing data is something that people do, and something I think that all executives need to be vigilant against. But I do think that, like you said, gamification, dashboards everyone has access to, so all the salespersons and managers and executives looking at the same data set, I think that's really helpful and can create healthy competition amongst peers, without it kind of becoming unproductive, uncomfortable, or creating just a negative work environment.
Do you have any kind of rules of thumb around what is perhaps better in a kind of more open report versus things that are perhaps better in a sort of one-to-one or more closed report?
All of my reps have their own individual dashboards that only they have access to. Individual KPIs, I think, are best kept as individual KPIs. If there's team or departmental KPIs, put them on a dashboard at that level. If there's high level, business goals, or kind of your rocks for the quarter, quarterly targets, if everyone's working towards that goal, I think everyone should have access to that. So I think permissioning within dashboards is really, really important.
As powerful as it is, what do you see or experience to be some of the biggest limitations or challenges when working with HubSpot's built-in reporting?
Yeah, some of the challenges we've encountered, with HubSpot reporting is that the user interface has changed a few times over the years, and it takes some nuance in learning the tool and getting used to it, and also an openness to change. And so those are some of the impediments that we see. Obviously just product teams who want really highly customized and visually stunning reports. HubSpot's probably not the best tool for that. The most important thing for us is the data's accurate. Our role here in the ecosystem is to make sure the data is set up correctly so the reports and dashboards are accurate. And I think as you look at our app partners like, Geckoboard, you alluded to it, Ben, there's another role to make the accurate data visually attractive and appealing, and it will be easily shared.
Is there a metric or a set of metrics that you feel are really, really important, but that most teams often overlook?
The thing that teams overlook the most that's super important is sharing these dashboards, right? And we look at whether it's via email or Slack notifications, that capability and getting it into people's hands, I think is far more important than even determining the right metrics and KPIs.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, it's been amazing to chat with you. Thank you so much for giving us all your time and sharing your experience and the things that you've done work well. What would you say is the sort of secret sauce or the special magic that really sets apart Aptitude 8 from other HubSpot solutions partners?
Our secret sauce here is really our people. We hire really well. They're really talented people who work here. It's a privilege to work amongst, the brightest in the ecosystem. So, most of our consultants have, 10, 15 years of industry experience, in RevOps and sales and marketing. And of course, everyone knows HubSpot. It's their industry experience and their career experience that helps them, I think be more stronger consultants and go-to-market consultants for our clients. And I think that's probably what our clients value the most is the HubSpot knowledge is maybe what they're paying for, right? But the ability to apply that contextually to real-world business problems is what I think we're really good at. And I think that's why I've had success.
Fantastic. Well, Bryan, thanks so much again. It's been a pleasure to speak to you and to learn from you today. So for now, I'll just say cheerio.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.